Hello, and welcome to Book Circle. I'm Earl Weinberg. This time we are continuing our reading of Aunt Jenny and the Delayed Quest by Jim Burroughs. Aunt Jenny and her companions are sailing on the Black River to the literal and physical land of Dream. After several hours of sailing up the Black, Jenny announced confidently that they were coming to what should be the Hayesmire, according to the map. Soon the banks turned broad and marshy, with fog and mist gathering along them. The terrain was relatively flat, and the river widened, the currents slowing. "And if this is Hayesmire, then a shallow navigable channel will open up to our right shortly," she added. "I think I see it ahead," called Sasha from the bow. "At least, there's a section without a lot of visible vegetation. It looks like it's about 60 degrees from our current course and winds first more to the right and then to the left." "Good, that matches the map." "The fog and mist is pretty thick in there. We may want to row. We'll definitely need to slow down." Morwenna started them down the channel, showing Sasha how to control the speed and course. Up until this point, they'd been concentrating on getting the most out of the wind as it shifted to different directions. Now, with the mists closing in, they needed to be careful not to exceed the limits of their visibility. Eventually, they did as Sasha had warned, took down the sail and rowed. Three scrambled into the bow to watch for obstructions. Sasha and Morwenna took to the oars, and Aunt Jenny took the role of steersman and navigator. Rudy and the cats seemed spooked by the mists, or perhaps just wished to stay out of the way. Whatever the reason, they gathered tight around the stowed rucksacks. The fog grew thicker and thicker until it was a roiling mass that seemed to hide or even become strange creatures and things moving within. It was so all-encompassing that it was hard to be certain what direction they were traveling. Aunt Jenny became concerned that they might start traveling in circles or fail to notice obstacles and other dangers the fog concealed. Her fretting grew until she was worried that her worry itself would send them astray, distracting her from navigating. She walked up to the bow and stood beside the scout. "How are we doing, Three?" she asked. "Water path that way," he pointed forward. "Good. Help me keep on it." She said this hoping that she kept the anxiety out of her voice, remembering what Morwenna said about how the marginalia's belief and certainty affected the reality around them. A fearful marginalis might bring danger into being, but a confident one might help them skirt danger and confusion. So long as she hadn't fed Three her doubts and worry, they should be okay. And yet, she fretted about how uncertain she seemed, and that worry began to grow just as the fog turned deeper and darker. She gave herself a mental shake and concentrated on how confidently he was pointing the way. Still, there were things out there in the mists, things she could not almost see or feel. The fog was so thick that they were nearly upon Fenmarch Station before they saw it, despite its size. "Docks!" called Three. "There! Slow!" Aunt Jenny could see them now and steered Morwenna and Sasha toward them. "Hoe the boat!" called someone from the mists. His words seemed to float down from above. After a moment, Aunt Jenny spotted the tower at the far end of the dock. "Ahoy the tower!" she called. "Are you in need of assistance?" came the voice from the shadows. Aunt Jenny thought, good, putting a positive spin on the question, relieve, not inspire worries. She smiled, but then her thoughts began to spiral in. "I'm already worried enough," she fretted, "worried enough that I may have created or summoned danger." She looked back over her shoulder. Throwing off the dark thoughts, she realized that she really should answer him. "No, we're fine," her voice trailed off before she could add, "for now." "Welcome to the edge of Dream," called the voice. Footsteps approached, and soon she could see two warders coming down the dock toward them. Fretting, Aunt Jenny clutched the amulet around her neck. It was warm to the touch, and she suddenly felt like a whole new person. The confusion, fear, and doubts that had been oppressing her vanished. It felt like a physical weight had been lifted from her. "Whoa, what was that?" gasped Sasha. "What was I thinking?" "'Twas the miasma of this place," answered Morwenna. "I was sorely pressed holding it at bay, but suddenly it lifted." Aunt Jenny looked down into her hand. The amethyst was softly glowing. She loosened her grip, and the glow began to fade, and her worries started to reassert themselves. She reclosed her hand on it, then tucked it and the silver necklace it hung from inside her clothes, warm against her skin. This time, when she released it, the miasma did not return. "Live and learn," she murmured, then turned to help the warders tie off the skiff. They'd seemed stern and intent as they'd approached, but now they were smiling. "Welcome to Fenmarch Station. How may we help?" asked one. Aunt Jenny took a proffered hand and stepped up onto the dock. "We bear a message and a request from King Vrain." "Then come with me. I shall escort you to the chief warder." The two warders helped the others from the boat and then led them into the fog, and, she hoped, toward the station. Once they were off the dock and approaching the tower, the fog began to thin, and they could see that it was part of a towered wall all around the station. Gate warders waved them through. Within the walls, the fog was nothing but scattered wisps of mist, weaving in and out between the station's buildings. The walls, towers, and buildings were all built of a jet-black wood streaked in silver. Here and there, torches burned with a bluish fire. The station itself had the look of a fort or a small walled village. There were stables, a blacksmith, and a number of other small buildings. One, given the smells emanating from it, dealt in food, especially baked goods. The warders led them across a broad open plaza or parade ground towards a large central building of creosoted wood. Here and there a few people were moving about, but none seemed to take much notice of them. The warders escorted them through a small door inset in a larger pair of double doors. An aging fellow with a large walrus mustache faced them from behind a desk. He wore the wine-red uniform of Fenmarch Station, visible to Jenny and the others for the first time, uncovered by mail or armor. "Visitors from the king to see the chief," announced one of the warders escorting them. "She's in and not busy. I'll see him in." Turning to Aunt Jenny, who was still in the lead, he asked, "And how should I announce you, milady?" "They call me Aunt Jenny. I have a letter of introduction from King Vrain." "Letter of introduction, you say? Very well, this way." He led them down a short corridor, which, despite the bluish glowing orbs that lighted it, seemed dark and somewhat foreboding, perhaps due to the black wood of the place. The old warder knocked at the door. "Come in," replied a deep contralto voice. He opened the door and, standing in it, announced, "Aunt Jenny, ma'am, and her party. They come with a letter from the king." He stepped aside, revealing a dark but somehow more comfortable room. The black of the walls was broken by the rich hardwoods of the room's furnishings. The same woods that would have seemed dark in any other room against the silver-veined jet black of the walls seemed oddly warmer here. Just standing up from behind the desk was a stout middle-aged woman in a wine-red Fenmarch uniform edged in silver. "Chief Warder of Fenmarch Station, miladies," the elder warder announced before withdrawing. The chief gestured an invitation for them to have a seat in the walnut and red leather chairs. "You have a letter for me, ma'am?" "I do," answered Aunt Jenny, stepping forward to hand it to the chief. "How should I address you, ma'am?" "Ma'am seems to be serving us both. You are from far away?" "Yes'm. Sasha and I are from beyond the mortal marches. The Lady Morwenna and the Scout 3 joined us along the way to the Shadowed Isle." The chief gestured again, and once Aunt Jenny and the others had taken their seats, sat herself and opened the letter. The king says you are the missing hero come at last, and that it is important that you get safely to Fengate and through to Dream. We are to give you every assistance, including our finest night steeds. He gives no particular reason or details. Is there anything that we should know in order to better assist you? Only that there may well be forces that wish to stop us, the same ones that hurt the king and caused the death of the queen. Any information or aid that you can give us in evading them as we are on our way would be especially appreciated. Oh, and it would help if you could confirm the accuracy or flaws of this map. Jenny fished out the silken map of the area from among those that Al-Bahith had given them. The chief put out her hand, and Aunt Jenny handed her the map. She examined it for a while and replied, "It is an excellent map. Its only fault is its age. The fen and mire grow with time, encroaching on both the river and the surrounding land. How much do you know about our river and the mire?" "Very little," replied Aunt Jenny, "and probably less than any who reside in or travel routinely through the halflands. My great-aunt once told me many stories, but my memories of them are colored pretty heavily by the fictionalized children's books about them, and both Sasha and I have lived only in the mortal lands until quite recently." "Well, the Black flows down from Dream through Rivergate, and it is the water that feeds the mire, its fens, marshes, and swamps. The peat and turf throughout the area are all formed from plants fed on dream water. If the halflands are closer to chaos than your lands and more magical, Hazemire is where form and chaos seek each other out, not the ruly forms of order, but the addled forms of dream. The haze is an active thing that reaches out to influence everything, the living land, the beings and folk that inhabit it. It is good that you brought a marginalis with you. You will be grateful for his simplicity and stability. They are alien to the mire." Aunt Jenny rested her hand on her chest, pressing the warmth of the king's eye against her. The chief continued. "The night steeds, great marcher ponies raised and fed in the Black's wetlands, can walk the paths, especially those that lead to Dream, far better than their smaller cousins. They will take you by the most direct route to and through Fengate. Ride them at the fastest gait that you and they are comfortable with, and do not tarry." Aunt Jenny could see how eager Sasha, who had always loved horses, was to ride the night steeds. She herself wasn't immune to the allure. "It is fine to water them on the Blackwater, but don't drink it yourself, nor eat the fruits watered with it," warned the chief. "Fill your skins from our cisterns and refresh your stocks of food before you leave us. Finally, one of the steeds we give you will be a stallion. With him along, the mares will strive their best. Do not give him his head, though, for he will lead you and the mares to the wilderness of Dream, where he can run uncontrolled. The mares in your map you may trust, but not the stallion." "Thank you so much," said Aunt Jenny. "The king also warned us of the night stallion, but the confirmation is good to have. The other warnings are new and so appreciated." The chief nodded. "If you have no further questions, the king said that your mission was urgent, so I will be happy to help you get supplied and on your way. The station is at your disposal." Not for the first time, Aunt Jenny caught herself wondering how she got in this situation, where the notion that she was some sort of savior of the halflands, someone for whom a king, even a bitter and broken one, would order folk such as the chief to assist. How had she become someone a goddess would assist? She pushed the thought aside as not helpful to her mission. The chief warder guided Aunt Jenny and her party through the quartermaster's, smithy, and stables to see to their full provisioning, as well as the shipwrights to ensure that the skiff would be shipshape awaiting their return. Chapter 9. Dreamland and the Queen Who Was. "Well, that was fast," said Sasha as they rode out of the station's gate. "Did it feel like we were being given the bum's rush?" Perhaps something the king said in his letter, suggested Aunt Jenny. You've been awfully quiet, Morwenna. Yes, milady, Aunt Jenny. 'Twas the miasma, or my thoughts upon it. Now that there are fewer ears about, I might ask, 'twas you that lifted it? I think so. It seems like the king's eye lifted it, really, and that it only works when it is in contact with my skin. Touching the eye makes it glow and grow warm. The effect began to fade when I let it go, so I tucked it against me under my clothes. I suspect that those blue lights they had all round the station did something of the same. I could feel their magic. Yours seems more potent, though. The king's eye sees clearly, as they say. Do they? Well, hereabouts. There's a poem back home tying a maiden named Amethyst to Bacchus and the ability to resist drunkenness. Perhaps it is true, or believing makes it so. Aunt Jenny? Yes, Sasha. How much head should we let the horses have? Jenny looked out over the broad fens, stretching as far as they could see, edged in mist. The peat, or whatever passed for it, was soft. She could feel her horse's hoofs sinking into it. I know what you mean. Back home I would be riding with care. These horses, though, are born and bred here. I think we should trust them. Morwenna, remember not to let him take the lead, though, and keep an eye on Three. He's no horseman. With that, Jenny and Sasha, who were in the lead, gave the mares their head. They immediately sped up and shifted gait. Jenny, what's she doing? I don't recognize this gait, called out Sasha. It feels like what I've heard called a tolt, which makes sense. They look rather like Icelandic ponies, which Icelanders insist be called horses. Whatever you call them, they have a smooth ambling gait, the tolt. If that's what this is, we should sit back a little. They did, and Sasha said, Wow, that's really smooth and fast. Soon all four steeds were tolting, and their riders had managed to find their seats as their mounts sped along in the high-stepping, fast walk that they seemed to favor. Once even Three and the little ones riding behind him in wicker carrier baskets were comfortable, Morwenna pulled up beside Aunt Jenny. Sasha followed suit. I do not know your word tolt. Hereabouts it is called by different names in different tongues. They mean walk, fast walk, or amble in yours. It is a pace unique to the marcher ponies. Those who have brought earthly horses and ponies here find their steeds don't learn the pace naturally or well. 'Tis often said that 'tis tied to the pony's ability to walk between. Whatever one chose to call it, the steed's fast ambling gait carried the party quickly across the misty fens. In less than an hour, distant mountains came into view, their peaks lost in the clouds. A few minutes later, the scout called out, Ladies, the sky! In the sky! Aunt Jenny looked back over her shoulder. This time, she didn't mistake the dragons for birds even for a moment. Damn, she muttered. I see them, declared Morwenna. Two, and a third far behind. They're gaining on us. Aye, and the first two may well close on us before we reach the mountains. Is that important? Asked Sasha. Belike, dragons do not easily cross twixt worlds. Those mountains measure dreams' bounds. They mayn't be able to follow us, and even if they can, 'twill be neither fast nor easy for them. Sasha looked back. They seem to be slowly gaining on us. Well, let's see what other paces this fellow knows. And with that, Morwenna put the night stallion through a number of gaits, trot, canter, gallop, and a final one that she announced by calling on him to fly, you magnificent beast. This proved to be his fastest pace of all. She wheeled him around and continued alongside Aunt Jenny and Sasha at a tolt. If I have to fall behind to shoot at them, I can catch up. He flies well. That was spectacular, answered Aunt Jenny. With their great manes and tails, that flying and the tolt, I'd say we've got Dreamland's answer to the Icelandic horse. They're gorgeous. There is some danger riding him this fast over this soft ground, but we mayn't have much choice with yon dragons in pursuit. This looks to be the fastest we can sustain. Best we keep to it for now. That will mean dealing with them before we reach the mountains. Aye, my lady. So what's the plan? Asked Sasha. There seem to be three choices. When they get close, we stand and fight, bows at range, then swords. Or one of us stands, interjected Morwenna, allowing the others to escape. I have the strongest, faster mount. I should be able to catch up. I need only delay them. Yes, Jenny continued, or we can push all the horses to that flying pace, choose our moment such that none of them falter before we cross into Dream. I should prefer seeing you three ride on safely while I engage the dragons, then follow as fast as this big fellow can fly, milady. I'm not a fighter nor a tactician. I'll trust you with both. Still, it makes me uncomfortable to keep putting others in danger. Our duty and our joy. They rode on in awkward silence for nearly an hour. Aunt Jenny looked back over her shoulder and saw the dragons now uncomfortably close. The steeds at a tolt were fast, but the dragons were a bit faster, and the gap was now nearly closed. I should have asked this before, she said. If the miasma comes back when I ride away from you, are you prepared, Morwenna? I believe so, milady. I have been steadying myself with my own fey means, and I think I am prepared. The foothills are approaching, and the dragons. I'll turn and wheel when we reach that copse ahead. 'Twill not be long after that the monsters will be in range of my bow. They arrived at the copse, and with a call of, May fortunes favor you, Morwenna wheeled her mount and drew out her bow and arrows. Aunt Jenny shut her eyes for a heartbeat or two. Blessed be my friend, she murmured. The copse was just the first of several as the fen turned into wooded hills. The trees were strange and twisted, like none that Aunt Jenny knew. The foothills at the edge of Dream, not as strange as some images that phrase may conjure up, but somehow a little more disquieting. The familiar became just slightly odd, then subtly weird, the strangeness growing so slowly and softly as to seem almost normal. Still, they were like nothing she had ever seen, and she wasn't really sure that she could quite say how. The hills rolled in suddenly, almost as if they were coming to meet the riders or growing in stature around them. It became hard to see the trail, and she gave her horse its head. Sasha did the same. Three, no horseman, had never even tried to control his own, just ride as smoothly and gently as he could, murmuring his approval and encouragement. The horses sped forward, sure-footed. As the path took them through the woods, at times the overhanging branches blocked the light from above, only to part and allow it to return. Its departure and reemergence drew Aunt Jenny's attention to the fact that it was not the direct light of the sun, but the glowing cloud cover of much of the duskward halflands. The mountains loomed ahead of them. The tree cover grew, and darkness rolled in, an almost palpable and active dark. Then, without warning, they were headed up a mountain pass, and the trees overhead parted. The brilliant reds, oranges, yellows, violets, and purples of a roiling sunset burst upon them, almost blinding in its splendor, its alien splendor, a sunset like none ever seen in waking mortal lands. Aunt Jenny drew her mount to a walk, then halted as they crested a hillock and the pass opened before them. Or perhaps it was the night steed's idea. She reined her horse slightly to the left as first Sasha, then three joined her. Are we waiting here for Morwenna? Asked the girl. I don't know. Aunt Jenny inhaled and let out a deep breath. That sunset! The light ahead! It's rather breathtaking. Look, said three, and pointed down into the pass ahead of them. By trees! Aunt Jenny saw it. Motion, as if something not quite seen scuttled through the trees that lined the pass, the trees now fully alien and unearthly, trees some of whose leaves were green, while others bore the many colors of fall, all on the same tree. There were things in the branches, perhaps just birds and nothing more. Let's keep going, said Aunt Jenny. Three on the left, Sasha between us. Aunt Jenny flanked her girl with the scout's stability on one side and the king's eye on the other. At a walk to start. Save their energy for a tolt or to fly when they're needed. Yes, Aunt Jenny. 3 do. The trail through the pass was broad, and it took them first down, then up again, but then it narrowed. Jenny pulled ahead. 3, fall back. Give her her head. You pay attention all round. They proceeded single file at a walk. Things were still moving through the trees. All was dancing in her peripheral vision, never quite seen, always felt. There was a chattering in the wood, birds or monkeys, insects or frogs, small chitterers, and wind in the leaves, the multi-hued leaves. And there, in the forest at the edge of Dream, we will leave them for the time being.